Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the message this week. We were looking at Matthew 17, which is a bit of an unusual story. Peter is confronted by a tax collector asking for taxes for the temple from him and, well, mainly from Jesus. And then Jesus responds with a conversation with Peter about, whether sons should pay taxes. And then he tells Peter to go and get a coin out of a fish's mouth. So there's lots going on there, and we spent some time unpacking the different aspects of it. It seems in one sense that Jesus is responding to something that is unjust. Jesus is heavily suggesting that he doesn't owe this money, he doesn't need to pay it, and yet he pays it anyway, or suggests that he does. And I kind of drew from a later part of the Bible, one of Peter's letters, where he talks about responding and honoring authority even though it might be unjust or ungodly. And there seems to be, maybe even the fact that Matthew chose to include this story in his gospel is suggestive that Jesus' example of enduring injustice but doing it in an honoring way and showing love and respect even when it's not being given, that is a Christian thing to do. And so we discussed that a little bit, but also we moved on to thinking about the fact that the tax in question was all about atonement. We see that from Exodus 30. It was all about how do we get right with God, and the tax was to be a reminder that everyone owes a debt of sin to God. We have not lived as we should, and our sin has accrued a debt before God if we were to stand before Him. But Jesus, in paying this tax, it points to the ultimate price that He has paid. He has paid through the cross the ransom for our sin, the debt that we owed to God, and therefore through faith in Him we can be free like He is free, sons and daughters before our Father. So that's a quick summary for you. Here's some questions to get your discussion going in your groups. Perhaps just start with this story. Maybe you want to read it out together. What surprised you? What was unusual about it? Even that question of, do you think Jesus is being literal, or he's making a kind of comment about the tax collectors and that sort of thing? Like, did the fish encounter actually happen, or is Jesus giving a sort of figurative, deeper meaning kind of response there? What stood out? What sense do you make of the passage? Question 2, I talked in the middle a bit about injustice. What's been your experience of that? Maybe give an example of where you feel that you have felt that you've been unjustly treated. And I talked about, we see in the life of Jesus both sometimes Him, in this instance, for example, just paying even though it's unjust and not making a fuss about it, enduring that but paying. And later on we see Jesus turns over the tables. What was your experience, and what was the right response for you? Was it submitting and enduring the suffering, or was it a speaking up, standing out and saying, no, this is wrong, turning over the tables? Maybe talk about your experience of that if anything comes to mind. And finally, I think where I want us to land here is about freedom, the freedom from sin. That's where that Jesus wants to leave us. Through faith in Him, we are free from condemnation, free to relate to God as children. We talked about that last week as well. Is that something you have experienced? And also, how do we live in the good of that? Condemnation often creeps in. What are the things you have found helpful to live in the good of the freedom of forgiveness that Jesus has won? He has paid our debt of sin. It's completely gone. He's paid it in full at the cross. How do we keep living there? How do we keep encouraging one another to live in that so that we don't come under the heaviness of condemnation or anything like that? How do we help one another? What's been helpful for us to live in the good of that? There's some questions to get the ball rolling with discussion. Have a great time. See you soon.